Let me start by talking, how can you really raise sales? And I'm going to talk about 4 things that you need to do to really take your sales to the next level. And the first one is really understanding what's the best way of selling. And let me tell a story. Imagine you have 40 sales agents and everyone's trying to sell in their own format, how they believe is the best way of selling. You don't have 40 best ways of selling. There's one. The job of the sales manager or the owner or the CEO of the company is figuring out from everything that you do, everything you've tested on how to sell, to figure out what's the best way. What's the best email to get a call, best way to answer calls. You have to really build a playbook, and we'll talk about the playbook a little bit more, of what's the best way to do it. And then get everyone in your team to sell that way. Probably 80% is going to be exactly the same. They could probably put 20% of their own sauce and their own style, their own way of saying things, but it has to be 80% exactly the same. Why? There's the best way. Your job is to find it and make sure they repeat it. As an example, whenever you're handling objections, whenever you get an objection, everyone tells their objection kind of the way they invented at the moment. That's a terrible way of doing it. You need to figure out what's the best way to answer an objection that the client will buy immediately or will not have that objection anymore, and make sure everyone responds like that at all time. And that's number one, right? Really understand what the best way of selling, and then get everyone in your team to sell the same way. The next question people ask, okay, how do I find what's the best way, right? You most likely have one agent or two that make 80% of your sales or a big chunk of your sales. Remember the typical 80-20. So I will start there. They're doing a combination of things that are giving a better result than the other ones. So, and then you need to have very clear KPIs of every step of the process. As an example, there's a KPI of first time you send an email, a voicemail, or on a phone call to get someone to be interested in getting to a sales call. As an example, at the Growth Institute, we hired a settler recently, and we have settlers and farmers and closers and all that in the sales team. We have a settler. His job is to get people on a sales call, right? He calls all the database and gets people excited and get them on a Zoom call. As an example, we hire a settler and we hire an expert on training sales agents and settlers. And as any new employee, we get them on the daily huddles and the weekly huddles, and we get all the cultural thing of the company, everything. And he said, no, I don't want this person to go through the typical process. And I was like, why not? It's part of the team. We have to make them feel part of the team. That's who we are as a company. And he said, no, the more they know, the more they want to put their own sauce and their own stuff. Just don't allow them to. Train them exactly what they have to do, what are the questions, what the script they have to get on the call, and don't distract them from that, at least on the first 3 months. After the first 3 months, then we could start working about other things. But at the beginning, you have 100 courses that you offer. If you want the person to be an expert on 100 courses, it's going to be a mess. Make them expert on just 1 or 2 courses they're going to start selling, and just help them to be focused there and don't be distracted for anything else. There, we have a settler. We trained her on 2 courses, and her job is to get just people on the phone. And we gave her a structured set of questions or a process to really understand why that person is interested in buying, what problems are they having, all that. And that we have our very clear KPIs. That's number one. Then it goes to a sales call, let's say. And between that and the sales call, we send them a couple of emails to keep them excited in the process. And on those emails, we know open rate, click-through rate, heat maps, and all that. And based on that, we understand what call to actions are working, what information in the middle is keeping them engaged for them to come to a sales call. Really important to understand what happens between setting the call and the emails that happen in the middle, and get the right KPIs. Then you get the sales call. And the sales call, we have a playbook, and in the playbook, it's a script of a sales call. And usually you have to test one thing. If you change 3 things in a call, you will not know which one worked or did not work. So we said, okay, this week we're going to test this playbook or this script. We're just going to change one thing. All the other 7 or 10 or 12 things have to be exactly the same. And then we have KPIs of this week compared to last week KPIs. And based on changing one thing is the typical A/B split testing. We also do it on the phone. And we change one question of the script, or we change one thing on the script, and let's see what happens. So every week we're testing something different. And if it improves, stays. If it does not improve close duration or conversion rate, then we go back to what we were doing last week. And every week we're testing, doing split testing on one or the other. And like that, we have several steps of our sales process. We have very key KPIs of the sales process, and we're doing split testing in each of the parts. And that way we're able, with some time, some certain months, we're able to get to the right way of selling. And then we just need to replicate that with everyone. By the way, if you want to know more about this, we have a great article on our blog that is called The 7 Key Systems to Build a World-Class Sales Team. Great reference that you go in and really get deep in understanding how to take your sales team to the next level. Out of the 4 things that I'm going to talk in this video, first one was get the one way to sell, the best way to sell. There's just one best way to sell. Number 2, you have to train your team. And it's impossible that you get to a system and then expect them to follow if they haven't been trained. So here's where the training comes. And here we love the analogy that sports teams operate way better than business teams. Why? Because they train a lot. Any team member that plays for the NFL or NBA or whatever of the best teams in the world, usually they train for 6 days a week or 5 days a week to play one game a week. And in a certain season, the rest of the off season, they're also training. So they're really training probably 90% of the time to play 10% of the time. And that's why they're the best. And by the way, don't you think whoever is, I'm not going to mention the name, but let's say the whatever team of the NFL drafts someone, pays them millions of dollars. And that person's going to say, oh, no, you're paying me millions of dollars. I already know what I'm doing. No, you still have to train the way we train and train with the other players. So we're all playing the same game. So it's really important that change your mindset instead of saying, hey, I'm going to bring the best people or the best salespeople and just going to allow them to do their things. No, I'm going to get the best, but still help them to execute in a great format. And here's a big question. Should I get an A player, the top 10% in sales for whatever? We've seen with some teams and some companies, they prefer to get B players because a B player is going to be willing to learn and test things. Because the A player, they usually have the mentality, I'm great already. I don't have anything to learn. I don't need anything better, right? The B players, they still want to become A players. They have the mentality of wanting to improve, and they're going to be more willing to test and more willing to train. Indeed, when we talk about A, B, and C players, and we'll talk about this in another video, a lot of companies said, so I win the more A players that I have, I win. Yes, you want to have a lot of A players, but that's a very difficult thing to have. It's like having a pink unicorn, right? They're very unique or non-existent. If you depend your company of being successful having a pink unicorn, most likely you will not be successful. What we tell companies is the best you can do is having a lot of B players wanting to become A players, a lot of B players with a plan to become A players. And because you're training them and helping them be successful in your company, in your culture, with your tools, the probability of them staying with you is much higher. If you bring someone from the outside that is already what they believe an A player and be amazing, they know they could be amazing anywhere else and they're going to be moving around. And most importantly, they will not want to train and learn with you and your company. Getting B players, we think it's much better to train them. So let me go back to training. Remember, sports team runs much better than executive teams because they train. Get B players that want to become A players, that have the attitude that they want to be the best, and then get them to train. And here's one thing that I love with Jack Daly. It's our faculty at the Growth Institute, that he said, hey, we're going to train you at least an hour a week. And it's part of the job offer. So everyone, wow, I'm going to have free training or training all the week. Get them on training. Yes, they give some training, but every week they get them in triads to train on their own. He gets 3 sales agents in a room, in 3 chairs sitting in front of each other, and said, okay, you're going to train for an hour. One of you is the sales agent, one of you is the buyer, the other one's an observer. And you have 20 minutes to do one rotation, let's say. One's going to sell to the other one for 10 minutes something, and the other one's just going to hear or see what's happening. After 10 minutes, they have a conversation, 10 minutes of what worked, what didn't work, all that. And the one that adds the most and learns the most is the observer. And then you rotate them and make the observer the sales agent, the buyer, and the buyer the observer. And they take 20 minutes more. So in an hour, they have 3 sets of 20 minutes. They learn to be the sales agent, the buyer, and the observer, and they got the 3 perspectives. If you do that with discipline in your company, every week, your team members are going to be amazingly better in sales, and they're going to be learning the best way of doing it, and they will keep that best way of doing it. It's really important to understand what's the best way, and there's just one best way of selling in your company, and then get them to train. Try to have that sales playbook and understanding what's the best way of selling. I'm going to talk a little bit more about playbook later. 2, hire not just the superstars that they feel they're superstars, bring a level before, but they're willing to learn. They want to become better. They're willing to do the work and the training to get there, and offer them a lot of training. Of course, the company is going to offer training on how to do it, and there's going to be process and systems and all that. But then you have to get them to practice the training. And that's when you have these triads of a salesperson, a buyer, and a observer to really see each other and learn how everyone does it. In 3-4 months after doing all that, they will be significantly better, and they're going to be selling with the same format. And now you have a sales team that operates as a sales team. Now let's talk about culture. And this is something also I learned from Jack, and you want to know more, the article that we have on the blog is very important. And by the way, Jack built 6 companies as an entrepreneur. He was always in charge of building the sales team. And his biggest sales team was, I think, 2,300 sales agents. And he says that for you to do great sales, that's the crest of the sales process. You need to have 2 things below. You need to have great sales management, and you need to have a manager that really coaches the sales agents and help them be accountable, KPIs, all that. But the core of a great sales team, it's a great sales culture. He said you could not even start building a team if you don't build a great culture for the sales team. And he teaches a lot of how to build a sales culture, starting that it's all about learning. It's all about practicing or working together to get better. It's all about having the desire to be better, not thinking you're the best. So you have a certain culture that you have to build by design, and then make sure you just bring team members that work in that culture. If you bring the typical superstars, individuals, whatever, they will not work. So you have to build a culture that will attract the sales agents and sales team that you want, and will repel the sales agents and teams you don't want. And that's the core of an amazing sales. You have the sales culture, then sales management, and then on top, sales tactics to improve your sales. And that takes us to the 4th thing to have a great sales team that will, let's say, connect all of this. And that's the playbook. If you go to any sports team, as soon as you join a team, what they give you? A playbook. Immediate, hey, these are the 100 plays that we play as a team. You have to learn them. You have to learn them on the book, and then you have to practice them on the book. Vern always says, if you want to have all your team on the same page, you first have to write the page. If you want your team to work all together, you have to give them the playbook, and you have to first write the plays for them to start learning them and practicing them. What connects everything on a sales team is having an amazing playbook. And I talk with a lot of CEOs, and they said, oh, we're great in sales, we do amazing sales. And I was like, great, show me your playbook. And they look at me like, I'm from Mars. And I was like, no, the best sports teams, they all have a playbook. If you don't have a playbook, most likely you do not have a world-class sales team. If you write a playbook, you train them, you have an amazing culture, the probability of you having an amazing sales team and, of course, driving amazing results for your business starts with a great playbook. At Growth Institute, we have a playbook, and we build it precisely with a class that we have called Hyper Sales Growth by Jack Daly and Mornay Smith. And we build a playbook based on the class. When we build a class, as an example, my team went with the class. We wrote the first playbook, and we've been improving it consistently based on how culture is changing and everything. But we always have a playbook. When a new sales agent comes to the company, the first thing we do is say, hey, here's the playbook. Here's how we operate. Here's how we get people on the phone, how we have settlers having the phone calls. Here's what you have to do. We have everything on a playbook. And it's a probably 50, 60-page document that explains everything. And one of the most important things, it has all objections we've ever had. Because if an agent gets an objection for the first time that they've never been trained on, most likely they're going to invent something. And the probability of them getting a good result is very low. We've had, every time we have an agent that hears a new objection, he puts it on an objection list. And we have a conversation with the sales team and sales managers. What's the best way to attack that objection? I'll give you an example. And this is something that has come up all the time. We always hear, hey, if I train my team, most likely they're going to go. And I was like, yeah, it could happen. If you train sales agents and they become much better sales agents, the probability of 2 or 3 of them to leave and go work for someone else, yes, it could happen. But let me give you the alternative. What happens if you do not train them? What's worse? They will stay. And what is worse for your company? That you train 10 and 2 or 3 go and you still keep 7 great team members or sales agents, that if you do not train them and you keep 10 lousy sales agents. That's an objection. It comes all the time. We had many ways of, let's say, go against that or have a response. We have a can response, always the same, and it's the one that guarantees results. We've used it, tested, and works great. When someone takes the Hyper Sales Growth class, we have templates of playbooks, but most importantly, we teach you how to do your playbook based on what your company needs. There's a certain flow of a playbook that we have that flow and we teach that flow. We have certain steps, but every company has their own culture. And that's why we talk that culture is super, super important. You cannot just copy a playbook of another company and it's going to work on yours. It has to be adapted to your culture. So more than helping you write your playbook is we give you all the psychology, all the knowledge on how to really build a playbook from scratch. We give you all the templates so you can get some ideas. But we teach you how to really build a playbook that works in your company, in your industry, with your sales agents, with your culture. You can really build a playbook that is going to give you results. And if you want to get that, you could see on the blog post we have about Hyper Sales Growth. It's a master business course we have with Jack Daly and Mornay Smith. And of course, you could see the class that we teach with them called Hyper Sales Growth. It's a 3-month intensive class with a lot of hours of videos with Jack learning directly, a lot of templates and tools to implement. And you get 7 live coaching calls, group coaching calls with Mornay to really understand what you learn and how to implement it. But most importantly, to have a conversation and a peer discussion on how to implement it, how to make it a reality. And this we hear all the time. Hey, the videos were amazing, the content, the tools really helped me put together and implement in my company. The calls with the coach were great to give me a flow or a process to implement and help me get unstuck. Whenever I get something, I get a question or something I don't know how to pass. And if I don't get unstuck, I'm going to get stuck there and don't be able to continue. I'm able to come to the coaching calls and say, hey, I did this, but we got stuck here. What do you recommend? And the coach usually has a lot of experience implementing and building playbooks and could get us unstuck much faster. But where really everything gets together is when we're talking and hearing a conversation of the other leaders with us, because they have the same level of knowledge that we have on building playbooks and they're implementing at the moment. Sometimes they have a concern or a complaint, or they're implementing even faster than us. And all the issues they're having implementing, we hear and how they solve it. And that helps us have a much faster and better implementation. So everything we do at the Growth Institute has these 4 levels. You get the teaching directly by the thought leader, and you curate the best thought leaders for mid-market companies. You get the tools and playbook so you can implement in your company. Learning without implementation goes to waste. Then you get a coach to help you, guide you through the process and help you get unstuck. And then you get all the peer support of other companies all over the world, helping each other to implement right. So you could have the right implementation, and of course, you get results. And every class that we have has these 4 components to help you implement the improvements in your business.